All right, welcome everybody around the world, and welcome to all my subscribers, and welcome to everybody who is not subscribed. So, I don't have any fancy background music. I don't have a fancy house or a background or any fancy getup, but I do have something astonishing for everybody. So, I can't make it look fancy, but what I have here today is earth shattering. So, it is, even though I'm presenting it so humbly, it is the greatest biblical discovery ever made. We're not here to argue, but it pretty much is the greatest. And I really hope that I'm not here for monetary gain, trust me. But I urge every minister, I urge every rabbi, I urge everybody, even if you're atheist, no matter your background, I urge you to listen to this biblical discovery. It's not just one little thing, it's actually 5 monumental things. Each their own are pretty amazing, some more than others, but all together, these 5 things solidify and put, they don't even just triangulate, they 5 angulate. Okay? These 5 astonishing finds all beyond triangulate together onto one fixed point, and it is monumental. Okay, and I can say now that of these 5 discoveries that work together like this to prove the one glorious thing, each one of these 5 is my own discovery. Some of them took an immense amount of work compared to others, but nonetheless, each of the 5 are my own. Nobody else out there on the planet, as far as I know, has ever even conceived of such, has never presented it. Some of this material I already have published in a book, and it's already copywritten. The rest of this is going into a book as we speak, and it is copywritten. Okay, all of these discoveries, like I said, are my own. They're my own hard work, product of, in total, 20 years of all my studies and hard work. Hours every day without fail. This is a quick little diagram I made because people like visual things, just to help map out and show how they'll connect to something. Okay, but I'm not here to bore everybody today with numbers. That's why I made this diagram, just to make it all simple. There are numbers on it, right? But I'm not going to sit here and start reading verses and quoting numbers and pulling out calculators. I'm going to make this a simple video for everybody. But I just want to say again, I really hope that all rabbis, all church leaders, everybody, pastors, ministers, whatever you might be called, and everybody from even different backgrounds and even atheists, I hope everybody takes this short time, because I don't want to make this really long and laborious, to listen to this incredible discovery. And I already have videos up on my Enoch the Witness channels. This one here, Enoch the Witness 2023, and on my main channel, Enoch the Witness. Okay, so I have many videos on these topics, keeping in mind that the more recent ones have the best, freshest, most up-to-date information. If you listen to some really old ones, it might be lacking some things or maybe some errors, let's just say. Okay, but I do have a plethora of, and I mean a lot of videos, hours and hours and hours, okay, where you can listen to things in greater depth. But I will cover everything with this nice little simple diagram here. It'll show everything in the important things, because people don't want to hear hours of waffling. We just want to hear something. So what is this greatest discovery that I honestly feel, and I maybe even God and Jesus would agree, or God would agree that, not to offend any Jewish listeners, right? But and as petty as it sounds, I probably did just lose all my potential Jewish listeners by saying that. But anyways, I'm going to keep Jesus out of this, right? So I'm not restarting the video. Okay, but I want to be respectful to everybody. I don't want to push anybody away, right? This is the biggest biblical discovery. I'm not going to make this churchy. This isn't going to be churchy. In fact, all of these discoveries that I made are Tanakh based. Okay, so let's just keep it like that. I'm not restarting the video. Okay, so what it all comes down to is, ironically now, I've been saying it for over 6 years, but ironically, we're in the year now, 2023. So it's almost too late for me to publish this book with all these things put together. Pretty much is almost too late. It could basically happen any time now, but we could potentially have another 9 months or so left. So it might be worth it, but I've already got all the videos out. But this is no light topic. This is, like I said, the greatest biblical discovery, because what the most monumental, epic thing to take place according to the Bible, no matter what your belief system might be, if you're a biblical person, is the talk of the end days, the judgment, the time of the resurrection. But more importantly, without trying to fuss over little things, we all have little differences, it's going to be the so-called end days of the great judgment. This is a very important time. It's important because, A, if you haven't gotten yourself right with God, you're going to be in trouble. That's one reason why it's highly relevant. Okay? But for many more reasons, as we can all imagine, the end days are a very important topic. The judgment day, more importantly, is a very important topic. The coming of God and the Messiah to the earth. Without fussing over who the Messiah is, okay? The coming of God and Messiah to the earth. And this is a very, very important time. And if there was any biblical discovery to in any way validate this and to provide incredible evidence for it, then that would make it probably the most monumental biblical discovery. Okay, I mean, finding the first temple or some ancient text validating this and that, like, I don't even know what other biblical discovery could be made. This is so important because it talks about arguably the most important event that will ever take place in any biblical believer's mind, and that would be the judgment day. It's the most important time because that's when God and Messiah are going to come here. Okay, it's our chance to be with them if we've gotten ourselves right with God. It's our time where we will be punished, and it could be sudden and without warning, this arrival. So it's of critical importance. That's why this is so critical. So what we have here, and like I said, each of these discoveries are my own, and there's nobody else out there on the planet who's talked about these that I'm aware of. Okay, maybe somebody in some foreign language, but the numbers are numbers. Numbers aren't a language, right? I've searched these numbers high and low. Nobody else has discovered any of these. So what we have here is the current year, 2023. We also have another important year. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this because people off the bat might, I just don't believe about 2023. Let's look at 1948. 1948 is the year that Israel was reborn. Very, very important. Any member of Judaism would know this. Okay, any good Christian minister would know this. 1948 is extremely important. Okay, we had the World War #2. I always get mixed up what year it started and ended on, but we had that happening. Okay, but 1948 was more important because after that war ended, Israel was reborn. Okay, and that marked a very important change in the world in light of biblical history, the return of the people to Israel. Okay, so that's a very, very monumental time in history, 1948. Okay, now in 1948, well, I might as well mention this little tiny thing right now, but 1948 AD also happens to be numerically the same year, 1948 AC, when Abraham was born. Abraham was born 1948 years after creation. Okay, and that's a completely unrelated calendar, a completely mathematically unrelated calendar, but yet we see that interesting little connection there. This is a minor point, but I might as well say it now. The interesting thing is that the Tanakh records that when Abraham was 75 years old, it's when God spoke to him out of the heavens and said, essentially, leave this land of idolatry, Haran, and go enter the promised land. Very, very monumental time. So important that it marked down, for whatever important reason, Abraham's age at the time. That would mean it was 2023 AC. So it's very interesting that in 1948, we have the rebirth of Israel, and that 75 years later, we come to 2023, okay? But all of these things are going to be validated by all of these points here. So anyways, but 1948, I just want to put a little bit of focus on that because, like I said, it's very, very important. If you want to hear evidence for 2023, let's start 1948. Okay, so the astonishing thing that I've discovered, things that I've discovered that all point to 1948. It would blow your mind. Okay, and the reason I put in this little diagram is to show the connections, right? And how they all point to these one things. And this is like, I didn't even plan it like this, but there's 5 things. It almost looks like a hand. It's just like, ha, ha, ha. It's like the handiwork of God, right? That's probably just made me help realize it and, smack it in my face that, hey, this isn't a coincidence. This isn't like, a five-fold coincidence in mathematics multiplied by the coincidence of it actually occurring with known, actually verified historical events of significant religious importance. No, this is the handiwork of God. These things, okay, that took place and that the Bible talks about, validates in terms of numerical prophecies, and it all points to 1948 and subsequently 2023. So let's start at the first one. Okay, the first discovery that I made, and I don't know how nobody else has done it because I didn't do anything. None of it, and let me just say now, none of these things are the product of bad maths or any far-fetched theories. I'll give a quick rundown of each one here. Like I said, for higher detail, go refer to my channel videos, right? But for now, nobody else ever thought what I thought here. And maybe it's because God inspired me and helped me. Maybe. I believe he helped me in all these discoveries. But I did do the work myself, right? I did come up with these ideas. I did think these things. I'm just not denying that God helped me. Nobody else has ever thought that, hey, Adam wasn't even born of a woman. He wasn't even created as a mortal. He's not a son of man. Adam himself, the guy Adam, was not a son of man. Why? Because he wasn't a son of anybody besides God. He was a son of God. He wasn't a son of man. Nobody has ever even mentioned that, thought of it, publicized that in any way, in any faith background, nothing. And then I realized that Seth was actually the first son of man, actually was the first born mortal, and actually was the first son of a woman, born of a woman. Seth was. Nobody else is talking about it. But I pursued this. Now, long story short, I have multiple videos going through the numbers meticulously, even stopping every few seconds to add them all up for subtallies. This is 100% legit. 100% legit. I might be able to do it all off by memory. But if you count from Seth, because Adam was about 130, I think it was, when he had Seth. But if you take Seth's birth as the year 0, there are 6,000 years exactly until this current year, 2023. Okay, and I've been talking about 2023 and how it ties into Daniel for like 6 years now on YouTube, right? This is no new thing suddenly out of the blue, right? But I've just further validated it with all these other discoveries now. But there are 6,000 years from the birth of Seth until now. Now, especially in Judaism, they would say, oh, no, you're wrong because that's off by 200 something years. This is the most beautiful way of proving it. Everything that I'm about to say is straight from the Tanakh. And once you hear it so logically laid out for you, nobody could argue this. I just posted this on Chabad's website as well. I'm interested to see if they have to review it and then post it, right? I would like to see, because I don't think anybody in their right mind could deny this. If we look at the Tanakh, every number that I will supply is from the Tanakh. It is printed in the Tanakh. It is not an invention of mine. Okay? If you look in the Tanakh and you add up the numbers that are given, starting from Seth, okay, after 1,978 years, Jacob was born. And if you look at all the numbers supplied and printed in the Tanakh, you will discover that when he was 109 years old, Joseph went into Egypt. Now the Tanakh tells us in one place that, I think it was to Abraham, your sons, your children will be in Egypt 400 years. Taking that 400 years from when Jacob was 109 and Joseph entered Egypt, which is quite fitting, okay, we then come to the Exodus. Now, we are then told elsewhere, I think in Kings, that it was in Solomon's 4th year of reign that the temple was built, okay, and that this was 480 years after the Exodus. Okay, all of these numbers are supplied in the Tanakh, okay? So Solomon ruled for 40. So there's a subsequent 36 years from Solomon. And when you go through all the pages in all the chapters, like I did a million times to verify it, and you add up the total, including those 36 remainder of Solomon, it equals 423, I think it is offhand. At the end of this, you've come to the final king of the first temple, which was, I always get mixed up who it was, but in either case, that's when the temple fell in 587 BC. verified by history, very well verified by history. It's not a far-reaching date. That's not my own invention. Every number is supplied in the Tanakh, and where the Tanakh ends, like literally in 587, that's where we combine that with known history. And it's a very well-known point in history, 587. From 587, all you have to do then is add 587 years onto the onto the tally already, and then 2023, and you're boom at 6,000. I've shown this meticulously in my other videos. There is no room for error in this. The only the only points of contention could possibly be where Joseph entered into Egypt, but out of all the different people's suggestions that I've heard, I don't think one's that much better than the other. And when you look at this, just from this perspective alone, the very fact that, considering, like I said, when Jacob was 109, Joseph did go into Egypt, and 400 years from that point, so if you're taking that, you get 6,000 years. There's no room for 200 missing and this and that there. When you see everything laid out, is that question. There are literally 6,000 years, no invention, no insertion, nothing taken out, 100% straight from the Tanakh, numbers on the pages, then combined with 100% known history. Okay? Simple arithmetic. 6,000 years. That's very significant because God created the earth in 6 days. A day is like to 1,000 years with God. Okay? Everybody knows this. Judaism and Christianity, people believe that. 6 days of creation, and then God rests, and creation rests on the seventh. Now, in Judaism and in Christianity, a lot of people for thousands of years have speculated whether mankind, from Adam, would exist for 6,000, and then the world would be judged, and then it would rest for 1,000 years. Okay? And in Judaism and Christianity, we have people who do still believe that. Okay? I believe that. Now, but many people do. It's not a limited belief. Now, there has not really been any hardcore evidence, I would like to say, until now, because nobody else has done that. For whatever uncanny reason, I appear to be the only person who ever has. Okay? But there are 6,000, inarguably, years. 2023 would be the 6,000th year. Now, if that is true, and if the 6,000 year theory, if you want to call it that, or the 6-day theory is true, then that's the first of the 5 pillars that would show and validate 2023 as the time of the arrival of God, Messiah, in the judgment day. Okay? That would be the 6 days. And some people might need this visual explanation as well, because even I did at times. Think about it like this: from 0 to 1,000, then from 1,000 to 2,000, from 2,000 to 3,000, from 3,000 to 4,000, from 4,000 to 5,000, from 5,000 to 6,000. That's 6 days. Okay? So at 6,000, it has been 6 days. I just want to stress that. Okay? So at 6,001, right after the 6,000, that's the start of the 7th day. Okay? So according to that framework, 2023 is the last year. So at some point in 2023 or at the end of 2023 would or should be that. Okay? But that by itself is very intriguing. Nobody else has done that math in the hard work and the days and years and all that, whatever it took me to come to that. Now, it is very significant. It is extremely significant, but it's by itself, it's nothing without all of these. It's still significant, right? Now, the other important thing is that this, in a sense, whether you believe in the 6,000 year prophecy or not, it maps out, because it's so well laid out in the Tanakh, all the way up to 587 BC. And from 587 until now, that's all known history. That truly existed. It's well documented. We have a 6,000 year timeline. Whether you believe in the 6,000 year prophecy or not, we have a 6,000 year timeline methodically mapped out, every single year accounted for. There isn't even a year of error. Every single year is mapped out here. That's important because it's like a baseline. So from this discovery point here, Seth, right? It's Seth. The 6,000 years ends at 2023. This will be important because all these other discoveries that I made all end at the same point. And they have different measures of time and this and that there. And so that's the first pillar. The second pillar here, ironically, is actually from the book of First Enoch. I'm going to read this one second because I roughly did them in order of like time or timeline. So not everybody believes in First Enoch, right? Even if you don't believe it, just bear with me and listen to it. Okay? In First Enoch, which has been found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? But anyways, I'm not going to argue for the validity of First Enoch in this video. In First Enoch, he has a prophecy where he says that for 70 generations, okay, that these beings, these naughty ones, we're not going to get into an argument because not everybody believes, in First Enoch and the angels and all that, right? But just bear with me. He gives a prophecy and says that these bad beings would be imprisoned for 70 generations. But if you read the start of that prophecy and the start of that chapter, like I showed in my videos, he says this, it's at a point 500 years before the flood. The flood was in 2451 BC, according to the Tanakh chronology, okay? And 500 years before that is 2951 BC. All you got to do is the simple arithmetic, like I've shown in my other videos, and the only contended point would be, well, how long is a generation? Well, consider this. I take it to be 70 years. I don't think that would be a hotly contested suggestion. However, it does fit neatly when you consider 70 times 70. That's looking pretty, symbolic in itself, right? Significant within itself. That's 70 squared as well, if I'm not mistaken, right? But 70 times 70, 70, a lot of people do consider 70 years to be a generation anyways, right? So that would be a second logical reason. But a third logical reason is when you do 70 times 70, you get 4,900. 4,900 it fits with a jubilee as a denominator. So a jubilee is 49 years. So a jubilee would divide into 4,900. So it would be 100 jubilees, is it? Yeah, 4,900. Yeah, so it'd be 100 jubilees. That's pretty significant. So going on that notion, but that is the only contended point. But numerically, if it's 4,900 years, and again, I'm the only person who has made this discovery on the planet. I don't know why nobody else in the thousands of years they've had this book, nobody else has stopped and crunched these numbers. But probably because nobody thought about the 500 years before thing, right? But go read the start of the chapter. So from 2951 BC, if you add 4,900 years, do you know what year it comes to? It comes to 1948. Okay? 1948. So for 70 generations. Now, like I said, I go into greater detail in all my other videos. But that's the second pillar. And that second pillar here, completely separate, unrelated prophecy. The prophecy of Seth, it's not a prophecy given in the Bible. It's just something people have considered. 6 days of creation, maybe 6 days of man. You know what I mean? But just call it the Seth prophecy or 6,000 year prophecy, right? You got that one. You got a completely unrelated prophecy given in a completely different book, First Enoch. It is allegedly canon. Some say it is, some say it isn't. Let's not argue, right? But in this prophecy, it pinpoints 1948. That's interesting. Now, not only that, if we could then look at the third pillar, which is the third discovery that I made. Again, I haven't heard anybody else on the planet ever talk about this. As far as I know, I am legitimately the only person to make this discovery or consider these so-called far out things. Long story short, it takes about half an hour to explain this. I have a video up on my other channel about this. But long story short, if you look at Daniel's prophecy about Nebuchadnezzar's curse 7 times, I'm roughing this out, smoothing this out, making it real quick for everybody. Just consider this, 7 times. If a time's 360 years, as we can see applied in Daniel and such, but going on that notion, 7 times would be 2,520 years. Check this uncanny, amazing thing out. Okay? Now, do we really think that Nebuchadnezzar grew feathers and, turned into an animal person? No, not really. Right? We have reason to believe, like I showed in my longer explanation on my other video, I go through all the logical reasoning and the steps and steps and reasoning to show that we would logically have reason to believe that it's a cryptic message. Okay? And we hear about a man being transformed into a beast person. That's quite unrealistic and not normal. But numbers are a normal thing. So without arguing, like I say in the video, what we don't know, let's look at what we do know. We do know numbers, and God says 7 times. So we could at least work with that, right? So without fussing over this very cryptic and strange thing that's said, and we look at the units of time given 7 times, we have to solve the algebra. So let's use a suggestion. If a times 360, which we would see backed up in Daniel anyways, and many have said this before in Judaism and Christianity, but nonetheless, that gives us 2,520 years. Now, we then have to look in Isaiah, as I talked about in that other video. I can't remember which chapter of Isaiah it is, but they talk about the fall of Tyre. And there's a prophecy of Tyre falling, and it's got 70 years attached to it. So like it falls for 70 years or whatever it is, right? But this is 70 years. And like I said, it takes half an hour to explain the steps and the reasoning, but let's just focus on what's simple and quick and easy. That's the numbers. Okay, we're given in this cryptic prophecy by Nebuchadnezzar a mention of 7 times, which could be 2,520 years. We're then told in Isaiah about Tyre, how Tyre would fall and would fall for 70 years as according to the year of a king. Now, again, a little bit cryptic. I showed in that video, I methodically went through every single mention in the Tanakh of the term 70 years on my video. Okay, I read them all. Every single occurrence, whatever it was, like 15 or 16, except for 2 that talked about Canaan and Mahalalel. Every single one was literally a prophecy that was talking about a time period. Okay? So 70 years, the use of the term 70 years in the Bible is almost, or is in every single case, used in terms of time period prophecies. Okay? Now, therefore, logically, when you read Isaiah's prophecy and he talks about Tyre falling or whatever it is that he says for 70 years, it's fair to say that this is, just like in all the other fashion, a prophecy that contains a time period. Okay? Now, Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon, overthrew Tyre. And they overthrew Tyre in the year 572 BC. Now, from 572 BC, guess what? 2,520 years lands you right at 1948. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. Right? So we have the 7 times said to Nebuchadnezzar being equated to, as I explained in my video in greater depth, what Isaiah said about the 70 years, according to the years of a king. That shows you that's to be cryptically understood like an algebra formula, right? It's not just straight in your face, just like all of them are. Jeremiah's 70 years, we read in Daniel. It's actually 70 weeks of years or 77s of years, right? In Ezekiel 4, God says, lay on your side for 380 days, but it's a day for a year, right? So in almost all of these cases where he's giving prophetic time periods, they are to be understood cryptically and algebraically, right? That's just a given. That can't be argued, okay, based on what we see in the Tanakh. So from 572 BC, when Tyre fell at the hands of Babylon, 7 times later, 1948. That's not a coincidence, okay? The other interesting thing is, notice that would make it 7 times exactly, okay? What's half of 7 times? 3.5 times. This is where, that's the third pillar, connects over to the fourth pillar, okay? In the fourth pillar here, we have how in 602 BC, verified historical date, when Nebuchadnezzar's forces of Neo-Babylon came in, this is before they overthrew Israel, they came in 602 BC and ransacked the temple and stole the temple implements and put a stop to the continual sacrifice. This is all very well documented. And for once, history actually agrees with the Bible on this. So 602 BC is a well agreed upon point. Now, in the book of Daniel, chapter 12, he tells us that there would be 1,290 days, applying day for a year, as in Ezekiel 4. And why would he tell us such a specific time period of like 1,290 days? You know what I mean? Or 1,335 days. It's obviously years. But anyways, from 602 BC, 1290 years later, we come to 688 AD. Okay? Now, the interesting thing is, this is pretty interesting. We go back over to this pillar with Tyre here from 572 BC. These are different events. This is when Nebuchadnezzar came in and ransacked the temple in 602. This is when Babylon overthrew Tyre in 572. That's a lot later. But ironically, from 602, 1290 years later, takes you to 688 AD, when Islam, the fourth and final beast kingdom, built the Dome of the Rock and the Temple Mount. But 688, the number is more important. 688 AD is 1290 years from when Nebuchadnezzar took away the continual sacrifice. But it's also exactly 1260 years, which is 3.5 times from the fall of Tyre. That can't be a coincidence, right? All of these things can't be coincidences by themselves, and especially not together. Okay? So from the fall of Tyre, you have 3.5 times, and that would take you right to when Islam built the Dome of the Rock and the Temple Mount. And then from there, 3.5 times takes you to 1948. And that takes you over to the fifth pillar, which would be the prophecy of Daniel, which I've talked about for 6 years. I have it in a published book around the world and everything. Okay, but the prophecy of Daniel, talked about in chapter 7. It takes hours to explain it all, right? But very, very simple. Daniel told us that there would be, he told us this one here, 1290 years from when the continual sacrifice is taken away. And then he also tells us that there would be 1260 years from the end of these wonders. These wonders would include everything that he had been shown in his visions, which would include Israel being conquered, thrown down, the people being scattered, going into exile. And one of the final things he was shown was an abomination being built on the Temple Mount. Now, when Daniel in chapter 12 asked the angel, how long till the end of these wonders? The angel says, after the completion of the scattering of the holy people is 3.5 times. So when did the completion of the scattering of the holy people happen? Well, in 70 AD, when Rome overthrew Israel, the scattering started, so to speak. And there were still people, Jews and Christians and everybody in Israel for hundreds of years, for about 600 years after that point. They even tried to enact, the Sanhedrin or the kings at some period of time. But nonetheless, they still existed there until Islam came in around 640 AD and conquered. Okay? I hope I didn't mix any BCs or ADs up, but anybody with basic historical knowledge will know what I'm saying. So in 688 AD is when the 10th Caliph of Islam built the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount. Okay, the first Caliph being the founder of Islam, and then so the 10th ruler of Islam. Now, ironically, in the book of Daniel, he talks and warns about how the final beast kingdom would have 10 kings. He keeps mentioning it. It's also mentioned in Revelation. Okay, how this one same beast kingdom would have 10 kings. But Daniel also talks about an 11th. He says one comes after the 10th. Now, why would Daniel and the book of Revelation, why would they talk about 10 kings so much? Well, if we look at Islam, the 10th Caliph built the Dome of the Rock and the Temple Mount, and he did it in 688 AD, okay? Precisely 1260 years before 1948. Now, in 688 AD, it's actually verified in historical accounts from the time that people were looking up at the construction of the dome saying that truly Daniel's prophecy has been fulfilled. This is the abomination that was forewarned. That is recorded in history. But not only that, you only need to apply some common sense here. Why did Daniel warn us about 10 kings when he told us there's going to be an 11th? And that the beast would rule up until the end of days, essentially. So we know there's going to be a lot more kings. Why would he stress 10? Why would 10 be so important? Well, if you read Daniel chapter 7, around verse 25, he says that there will be the 10 kings, and then one comes after them, and the kingdom is given into his hand for 3.5 times. This is a second mention by Daniel of 3.5 times, which is 1260 years. But Daniel 7 there verifies what he says in Daniel 12 about the 1260-year period. Because that 1260-year period can only come after the completion of the scattering of the holy peoples. Okay, the peoples are still in Israel in 640 AD when Islam conquered. Okay, and they were still in Israel when the Dome of the Rock was built. The difference with the Dome of the Rock is that's on the Holy Temple Mount. By putting that temple to a foreign god, like Daniel warned in chapters 10 and 11, he said that this one, this despicable one, would take the kingdom and win it by flatteries, and that he would hoard all the riches and booty from all the lands around, give it all to this foreign god that even his forefathers didn't know about. He would change the times and laws. This is everything that they did. They rewrote the Tanakh, they rewrote the Torah, they rewrote the law, they wrote it as the Quran. Okay, and the Temple Mount is like the signet jewel on the ring. And when they built that Dome of the Rock on it, they were utterly occupying the land, like in all ways, in utter opposition to God, to a foreign deity by a different name. So, and he came and, died and no one was able to help him, just like Daniel said. But in 688 AD, right? Let me get back on track here. Stop trying to justify things. So let me get back to these time periods, right? So from the fall of Tyre, 3.5 times takes us to 688 AD. Okay. And then another 3.5 times takes us to 1948. Oh, that's what I was saying, the scattering. Yeah, that's right. When the Dome of the Rock was built on the Temple Mount, picture if you live in the land at that time, it just got conquered in 640, and a lot of people fled then. Everybody who didn't flee, they had to stay and pay a jizya tax or convert or this and that there, or maybe some were beheaded, probably a lot, and enslaved and so forth, right? Now, a lot of people wanted to flee after that point, obviously, because then they began to realize how bad it was under their yoke, okay? And they will go on to rule over Israel for 1,260 years until 1948, when after the Arab War, I think it was called, they got the land of Israel back and the right to come back in. So when the Dome of the Rock was built, like I said, it was like the signet jewel on the ring, claiming ownership over the land, utter, just trampling over the honor of God Almighty and replacing it with something new and foreign and heathen that's rewriting everything known. Okay, that's the greatest blasphemy. That's an abomination of abominations. And that occurred in 688 at the hands of the 10th king. Okay, and this cannot be a coincidence. And from the point, like Daniel said in chapter 7, that there be the 10 kings, and one will come after him, and the kingdom is given into his hand for 3.5 times. It cannot be a coincidence that 1,260 years, 3.5 times from the Dome of the Rock, takes you to 1948. Because what happened at 1948? Everybody got to come back into Israel. So when you look at it outside the box, you have a period of 1,260 years. At the end of it, people come back into Israel. At the start of it, people fled. What would you call this part? The completion of the scattering. People are scattering since 70 AD. They've been scattering for 600 years. But once that Dome of the Rock sealed it all off for everybody, okay? I mean, you could conquer the land of Israel. But once you wipe out the remnants of the temple and rebuild a temple to a new God and rewrite the Bible and start doing all of that, then yeah, that's it. It's sealed and done. You get the hell out of there. And if you don't, then kiss it goodbye. That's the completion of the scattering of the holy people. 1,260 years later, it ends. You have the return of the people. Okay? So the logic there is beautiful. Fits with history, beautiful. Fits with Daniel's numbers, beautifully. Okay? And then at the end of chapter 12, he says that, he doesn't say it directly, but there would be an extra 75 years because he says the 1335th is the end. So looking at what Daniel said, he said there's 1,290 years from Nebuchadnezzar took away the continual sacrifice. So 1,290 years from 602 takes you up to 688. And then 3.5 times until the end of those wonders in 1948. But that's not the very end. Daniel said, after being shown those things and asking that around verse 7, he's like, you could tell Daniel was thinking, well, I didn't ask him about the end of days. I just said the end of these wonders. So the angel or God, I'm not saying the angel was God. I'm just saying the angel and God, they knew what Daniel was thinking. And they're like, oh, I can't remember exactly what they said offhand. I don't have it open here. But Daniel's next step was to essentially find out when the end was. Okay. And either Daniel asked it, but they did tell him. So they said, and they called it the end. I think in duplicate, not even just one mention of it. So the 1335th is the end. And blessed is he who makes it to that point, and you go on to your lot to stand at the end of days. Okay, and it's called this, I think, in like two places. So the 1335th would be the end. This is 75 years after what is 1948, and that gives you 2023. So when you take a step back and you look at it, like I said, well, what I have discovered are 5 pillars. Okay, we have a baseline of 6,000 years, concreted diamond hard baseline that stems all the way back from the birth of Seth to the year precisely 2023. That's 6,000 year baseline. That's the 6 days. The very fact that that there ties in with these is an astonishing perspective within itself, because people have often thought, oh, well, we have 6 days till the end of time. Well, that's proven by all of this. Okay, so we have that pillar. Then we have this pillar here from first Enoch, about the 70 generations, that ended 1948. And then we have the so-called prophecy of Tyre, that ended 1948. And then we have the prophecy from Daniel, which ends in 1948. And the ones that connect over to 2023 are the baseline, like I said, from birth of Seth until 2023 is 6,000 years. Okay. And the other one that validates 2023 is Daniel chapter 12 with the 1335th. And it so explicitly does it, there's no room for conjecture. Okay, so we have a baseline, and then we have the apex capstone from Daniel here. So, and then we have the supporting pillars, and arguably the 5th as well, right? But just keep things simple, right? We have 2 main branches that prove 2023. Then we have 3 branches that point to 1948. And we also have a connection over here, like I said, from Tyre 7 times to 1948, but it's also 3.5 times, ironically, until the abomination in 688, and then 3.5 times to 1948. So these are astonishing things, and each one of these discoveries is my own. Some people have come on to 2023, but they've done it through completely different methods. Obviously, the Dome of the Rock is the key thing, and a few others have realized that, but everything else, and obviously it does not take rocket science to realize these things, right? But go look for yourself. Very few people are even saying it, and they all have different methods and reasonings and different sources and everything, right? But I mean, let's not fuss over that. The fact is, these are all my discoveries. Okay, I'm sharing them with everybody, but they are copywritten. Okay, but I'm sharing them with everybody. Why? Because look at the year, it's 2023. Okay, if the Bible is real, all right, and I'm not saying give up your faith if it doesn't happen. You know, a lot of people have always been uptight about predicting when the end is. This isn't predicting. It's not predicting when your teacher in school slams a book down on your desk. This is literally what happened with the Bible. Your teacher slams down a book on your desk and says, open up to this page. You open up to that page, and you see some numbers on there. And your teacher says, read what that sentence says with the numbers. And the numbers say, blessed is, count, blah, 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 to the 1335th. Blessed is he who is coming to those days. That's an instruction to count until the end of days. It's in Daniel chapter 12. I've had multiple videos on this, stressing this before. There is an instruction from our teacher to count and to know and to be ready and to be waiting those days. And he gave us those wonderful prophecies from Daniel, those visions, okay, that were given to Daniel, and he relayed them. He gave that prophecy to Enoch, okay? At the time, it actually wasn't Enoch, it was Methuselah or something, right? It says so in the chapter, right? And the prophecy was to be given to Noah 500 years before the flood, okay? So, and then we have that prophecy there going to, again, Daniel, but also Isaiah, okay? And then with the Seth prophecy, that's all the chapters of the Tanakh that give you all those numbers and supply that timeline. So God spoke to all the prophets and gave all the prophets numbers, okay? In Genesis, when we have all those numbers of the ages of the patriarchs recorded, what has anybody truly ever stopped and thought, why did God supply us all these numbers? Like I said, the teacher has taken you to class, slammed a book down in your face, tells you to open up to certain pages. The pages have instructions containing numbers, right? What are you going to do as a diligent student? Ignore the numbers? Why do you think the teacher put those numbers in the book, right? The one thing those numbers show is the 6,000 years, which show that the end is 2023. That's what the numbers he gave us show. And that's validated by all these other things. I mean, it's astonishing. It's astonishing. The fact that 1948 here makes it more astonishing, because if you took that out and it was just the 2023 and it was just, one or two of these things, it would be far less fantastic. It would still be amazing. But with this 1948 in there and like this little crossover here, I mean, this is astounding. Like I said, like no pun intended. It's like the handiwork of God, even though it looks like a hand. It's the handiwork of God. The fact that all these things line up and point to one thing should tell you something. It doesn't matter if you're from Judaism or Christianity or whatever you are. It doesn't matter, right? I didn't have to mention anything about New Testament or Jesus. We can all come together on one umbrella here, okay? As biblical believers, put differences aside and understand and prepare for the fact that according to the Bible, in 5 ways, it has been beyond triangulated. It's been like quadrangulated or pentangulated, okay? It's been like pentangulated. 2023. We have 9 months left approximately, okay, to the end of this year. Now, God told, I've said this before, besides this, like maybe 2024 comes, oh, is the Bible a lie? I'm not even going down that avenue. I'm not even going to feel that way, even if it doesn't happen. It might happen 1 year later. It might have been a year off. I don't care. I'm going to take it as it comes. I'm going by what God has given us. God shows us this is 2023. I'm going to prepare like it is going to happen. And if I'm wrong, whatever, I'm a better person. Okay? But if the end is coming this year, okay, what did God say in Tanakh? Okay, because the New Testament only just repeats what Joel says anyways. What does he say he would give us? He said he would give us signs. The people would have dreams, others would have visions. Lots of people have dreams and visions, right? A lot of people are in these years, I myself included, having dreams of the end days. But that's not the greatest evidence, because people could make up dreams and you can't see what they saw, and dreams are ambiguous anyways, right? But God did say he would give us them. But maybe we can't really focus on them. But he did say things that we could all focus on and know and wouldn't be able to deny. He says that there would be signs in the heavens, columns or pillars of smoke or vapor, okay? And that the sky will go a bloodish red. Now, we also hear in the New Testament that stars will be falling at some point, right? But let's go and look at these things here. Columns of smoke and vapor in a red sky. Now, that could be volcanoes erupting, but volcanoes always erupt. So how is that going to be a sign from God? You know what I mean? And he could have said mountains shaking and columns of smoke, but he could have also said columns of fire. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think he said columns of fire. But in either case, what I think is more likely, I mean, it's either going to be volcanoes that he's suggesting or meteors, asteroids, whatever they might be, comets. I'll just sum it up as meteors. If meteors are coming down, what are they going to look like? Like if there's lots of meteors coming down to the earth, or a few big ones, whatever, and you don't see them hit the earth, but then you look out your window, what are you going to see? A pillar or a column of smoke. That's what you're going to see. And if there's a few of them, you're going to see pillars and columns of smoke. That's a fair, sensible, natural explanation for what God said he would send us as signs. Now, like I said, it could also be volcanoes, right? Now, usually you don't have lots of volcanoes, so you kind of look outside your window and see like lots of pillars from volcanoes going up. But long story short, I think it's more reasonable that it's probably going to be meteors. And meteors coming down to the earth would be more like an end day scenario, because volcanoes erupt all the time. I mean, like every year, probably dozens of volcanoes erupt somewhere. Anyways, so considering that it probably is more likely that God was saying that you're going to see meteors coming down, the sky going red and this and that there, let's go look at the earth in the last 75 years. Now, is this a coincidence that in 1948, the same magical year, that was the year that Roswell happened? That's the year when UFOs, well, I'm not going to say what they are, good, bad, whatever. I'm not going to argue and fuss about things. Whatever they are, UFOs started crashing and appearing. Okay? I think it's related to the angels. I'm not going to get into all that because it'll create arguments between people. Okay? Whatever they are, they started appearing in 1948. That's a fact. I didn't make that up. Okay? In these 75 years, we went from not seeing them, or very rarely ever seeing UFOs, to seeing them. Look at the graphs going up, 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 up. In the last few years alone, it's been skyrocketing. So, interesting, is it not? So, we're looking for things in this world that would show us, okay, is it gearing up towards this great end times? Are we seeing cosmic type things, or things that would just hit us in our soul like, hey, something's happening on the earth? So, we got UFOs increasing. What are they doing? They haven't attacked us. They're watching us. Whether they're good or bad, I'm not even going to argue about that. I'm just saying they're obviously watching us. Right? Even the American government admitted that they're tracking 600 UFOs. Right? It's already been shown in other studies that hundreds of UFOs follow set paths that they go on all the time, like routes, like traffic. Okay? They're obviously observing us. That's what watchers did, according to the Bible and ancient belief, anyways. Right? So whether they're good or bad or not, let's not fuss. But they're obviously watching us. Now, why would they suddenly show up in 1948 of all years, right? Going back to my diagram there, why would these watchers show up and start watching us for these 75 years? That's a sign that is cosmic, that's out of our control. Okay? And if you ask me, the fingerprint of God is on this because they haven't attacked us. They're obviously more powerful than us, more advanced, but they haven't attacked us. What are they doing? 75 years, that's a long time to not attack somebody if you want to take over that planet or something nefarious. They're watching us. Now, if they were, I mean, they're either working for God or they're not. You know what I mean? I don't want to create arguments, but my point is they haven't done anything negative for 75 years. Okay, they've been watching us for 75 years. There's lots of congressional evidence that they've actually shut down nuclear missiles from tests and from launches. Okay, they shut them down. They power down the whole station and the systems. They deactivate all the missiles, and then the people have to go out and the UFOs flying over the base. This is all documented while it's happening. They're showing off like, hey, we can turn off all your nuclear missiles. They've probably stopped nuclear wars. So whether they're good or bad, we don't need to argue, but they've been doing things like this, watching and in some ways protecting us for 75 years. Now, why would they suddenly show up at this time? Probably because something big is about to happen. Okay? I could get into the New Testament and how the angels are going to appear in the heavens, like Daniel 7 says, and all that, but I don't have to get into that. But in Daniel 7, Messiah will arrive in the heavens on the clouds, signifying with the hosts that the armies and the hosts of the heavens. You might even say that, I can't remember, but nonetheless, he's going to arrive with the angels. Okay? And these ones up here, these beings or whatever they are, could be watching in preparation for this event. But not only that, since 2010, the whole world, again, this is out of our control. This is something that's factual, that's real, that's been verified by science and all authorities around the world, are these great noises that have been coming from either the sky or the earth. I think they're coming from underground. Maybe some are coming from above. But I think the majority are coming from underground. That's a whole different topic for a whole other conversation. But undeniably, these sounds are real. They've been investigated by authorities, by science. They've been on the news. Millions and millions or hundreds of millions of people have heard them. They are undeniable. What are they? They sound like giant metal bars and gates being opened up and giant stone blocks being moved. They sound like giants walking around or grunting or shrieking and all sorts of, or cosmic trumpets being blown. I mean, all these different things, right? Yes, there are some fake videos, but like I said, millions have experienced this. It's documented. It's real. So it doesn't matter if there's some fake videos out there. What are these things? What is going on here? There's an ancient Jewish prophecy that says that in the final 7 years before the coming of Messiah, that in one of those years there'll be great sounds heard in the heavens, right? So maybe that's reflective on this as well. So we have those things happening. Those are things out of our control. And, you know, maybe rocks have always crashed down and hit the earth. Maybe it's just because we have more cameras now, we're seeing it more. But in the last few years, because I've been tracking this for over 6 years, I have a program that I use that tracks meteors and gives me alerts. Anybody can download it. It's on the Play Store. And I've been watching this for years. It beeps and it lets off a noise and tells you what the object is, how far away it is, how close it is. And I've noticed in the last few years, there's been a lot of objects. Thankfully, nothing, well, some have been massive and would be world changing, but there's been a lot of objects passing between the moon and the Earth. That's shockingly close on an astronomical scale. They have the whole space to be flying around, but they're going between our moon and the Earth. It's not that far, okay, between the moon and the Earth. And all it would take, and there's something, what's it called? There's gravitational keyholes, I think they're called. So we're always led to believe that these rocks are on these set courses that the fancy scientists know, and they'll never deviate. That is not true. There are these things called keyholes, and there's probably other things out there that could just make them deviate. Okay, and they'll just go on a different path and then blam and hit the Earth. So there has been an increase in these objects. I've seen it firsthand with that tracking program, and even in the news. But it might be a combination of more people have cameras. The news is just covering more of these type of topics, all that combined. But you can't take away the facts that these objects, the tracking programs have always existed. Okay, near Earth. I mean, what is it? I don't know the term for it. Ones that come within a lunar distance. Those have increased in the last few years. We had one that I think was about 800 feet that came within a lunar distance in the last couple of months. If that hit a continent, it would wipe out like 50 million people in one go. Bam. Right? It would be like 1,000 Hiroshima bombs or something. And that's just one object. You don't even know the first of it. If you go onto NASA's own website and you go to their list of potentially hazardous objects or near Earth objects, whichever one, there's like 10,000 on there, right? I tried looking through them all. And then I noticed a little bullet point where they said, we estimate that this is only about 1% of the objects that are actually out there. There's too many to document. And I'm like, what? So they've documented 10,000, but it's probably just 1% of what's out there. It's basically like saying, yeah, there's so much stuff flying around out there. There's no way for us to even begin documenting it all. So let's just take a tiny little pinch from this giant mountain and at least just analyze something. That's basically what they've done. So there's tons of things flying around everywhere. Look at the Earth. Look at the moon. Like if you want proof things hit things all the time, look at the moon. What does it look like? It's covered in impacts. The moon is a lot younger than the Earth. I'm pretty sure, right? It's a lot smaller. It's harder to hit. Look how many times it's been hit. It just doesn't have trees and all sorts of stuff and clouds covering it. Our Earth has been hit just as much. You're going to tell me that the little moon there is like a magnet that goes and gets all the things that, no. As many things have hit the moon and make it look like Swiss cheese, as many things have hit the Earth. Earth is bigger, so more of those things would have hit the Earth. Okay, and if you look at science tells us there's been like 5 extinction level events on this planet that wiped out like 98, 99% of all species, all life on the planet were wiped out by things falling down from space. Okay, and if God is in charge of everything in the universe, and all the galaxies and everything spin like little gear wheels, he put them in place. He knows how they operate. He knows when planets are going to get struck with stuff. And God knew 6,000 years ago that, in 6,000 years' time on my God clock, the Earth is going to go bam and get hit with a pile of stuff. So let's utilize this. I'm just putting myself in those shoes, right? To illustrate it for everybody, right? God would probably utilize something that he's already put in place. That's my point, right? And utilize that rather than God having this big magical Hollywood style event, end of days, you know what I mean? Like a Hollywood movie. No, it's more like in the cosmos, stuff like that happens. God's aware of what happens in the cosmos because he designed it. And he knows that after the 6,000 years, all these rocks are going to start hitting the Earth. The sky is going to go red, pillars of smoke, signifying that the end is here. God and Messiah will arrive with the clouds and the angels down from the heavens. The great judgment will take place. Okay? That's what God did. 2 birds, 1 stone, as they call it. Achieve 2 things at once. So that to me, I think, is what's going to happen. So I've talked long enough. I want this to be under 1 hour, so I will get going. But this is the greatest biblical discovery. Like I said, 5 pillars proving one thing, 2023. It has to happen this year. We still have 9 months left for it to go. Okay, so, you know, even if it doesn't happen, let's prepare like it in case. Because I'm telling you now, nobody else in thousands of years has come out with findings like that. Nobody. This isn't just one thing, it's fivefold. It's not triangulated, it's pentangulated. You know what I mean? It can't be a coincidence. This is God given. All right, God given. And the very fact that those prophets gave prophecies that matched up with history so perfectly numerically also helps validate the Bible as real prophecy. So you better get yourselves in order. Okay, whether you're Jewish, Christian, Hindu, Muslim, atheist, whatever you might be, don't matter. Get yourself in order, because God willing, it's going to be coming this year or the start of next year or whatever. God willing. Anyways, take care, folks.